Okay. So, just finishing eating a pretzel, and I hit record, and the second I hit record, they started drilling, and there was so much noise that I just decided, well, let me just eat some pretzels, and maybe the noise of the construction and drilling will eventually stop. So now it's stopped, and we'll see if it continues. So this is what? Episode 4. Yes. Episode 4. In the last episode I did, so I got lost there for a second because I was looking at the time to see if the timer's right, because I hit record like 5 minutes ago, but I never hit stop, so it's still going. It's just so I can time the hour properly. But so in the last episode, I talked about this idea: if you could ever ultimately live a good life, if you don't sort of create some sort of meaning. It's a very interesting thing that I've sort of been thinking about a lot lately, because we're always told this idea of, oh, just be happy, if you're happy, everything's good. What do you want to be? I just want to be happy. But just being happy for most people eventually is not enough. And you need to create some sort of you have to have some sort of you have to have meaning in your life, purpose, not just be happy. For example, you can go to a bar, or you can go dancing for a night and you're happy just dancing away and being happy. But eventually you have to have a little bit more meaning in your life than just simply having happy moments. And that's a strange realization, to understand that if you don't have any inherent, just natural meaning in your life, for example, I'm sure sometimes in people's lives, without even trying, they sort of have a lot of meaning and purpose for whatever reason. Whatever they're doing is really helping out their community, or they're really useful in a certain area, then they clearly have some meaning in their life. But for other people, for whatever reason, that natural meaning was never really created in any significant way, which makes you feel like you're living a purposeful, meaningful life. And that's the biggest irony in all of this, is that if you don't have any natural inherent meaning in your life, you have to manufacture it somehow. Even if you know that existence and your life is ultimately meaningless, you have to manufacture some sort of apparent meaning. Otherwise, you're never truly happy, because you feel like, why am I even getting up in the morning? Right? Because we need to feel some sort of purpose to get up in the morning. Why am I getting up in the morning? Because if it's just simply to survive, that's really not a happy life. That's just a life based out of fear. Because that's just you're living in your survival mechanism. Everything's about survival. That simplest part of our brain is really all it's trying to do is survive. It doesn't really give a shit about purpose or meaning. It's not a matter of intellect. It's not a matter of deep thought. It's just my job is just to survive as a living being so I could procreate, and then that's it. So like at the biological level, there's always that sort of meaning, right? Just like your meaning is to just, your purpose is just to fucking procreate, and that's it. Spread your gene and just, that's it. But when you're cursed with the idea of an intellect, because it's a blessing and a curse, but the intellect really is just like there to fucking masturbate by yourself with, because you sound like really intelligent, but it's just really, it's a way to jerk yourself off, really, because the intellect fucking serves no real purpose, just other than to fucking make you depressed, really. Oh, let me intellectualize this, let me think about it deeper, like it just, it's there for the sake of being there. What the intellect does is it kind of just really just ruins your fun more than anything. It's like you can't just have fun. You have to rationalize the fun and think about it and ponder it. It's like the intellect is the part of you that won't let go of the idea that existence is nonsense, because there is no rational explanation for it. It just is, and your intellect just will not fucking let go of it. It can't just accept it because it makes no sense. So it just keeps going on this infinite loop of what the fuck. And so that was my last episode. Figured I'd do a little recap. So to continue this what the fuck moment of your life, I would say there's been a couple of things that I think about. When you have this idea of like what is like your ultimate fear? Do you have any fears? People are scared of like oh, will I ever be successful in life? Like, because I don't want to be looked at as someone who didn't have success in life. Or my ultimate fear is everyone has these fears. And you typically speaking, you don't want to acknowledge your fears because this feels like a weakness, and it's weird because generally speaking, I don't want to sound like I'm some sort of fucking I don't want to sound like I'm some sort of badass who has no fears. I generally speaking don't have a lot of fears, but the things that I guess you would say I fear are so deep and so intense that, for example, let's say someone like has like 50 or 100 casual fears. A lot of times people mention things that they fear, they're paranoid about. I just sort of think, wow, really? I just, because it's like it doesn't really relate with me at all. But the couple of things I guess you would consider fears for me are so deep and so crazy that I think they equal out to like probably 50 or 100 casual fears. There's not many things that I would say. It's funny because I honestly believe that our fears go with us at night. Our fears, not only do they go with us at night, but I have a feeling that our fears, they really, you can see them in everything that you do. Like, for example, I make YouTube videos and I'm very comfortable pressing record and just talking because I don't really fear what I look like. If I look like an idiot, I look like an idiot. And they're like, people always ask me, Tony, how do you just keep talking and talking? Because I'm just talking. What the fuck is it? It's just me making sounds with my mouth. Like, I'm not going to sit there and like, be really hard on it. Oh, look at this. I stuttered my word there. Or, oh, no, I repeated myself. It's just, you fucking press record. So stuff like that. People have a lot of these sort of fears. And I look at those, I'm like, oh, come on, man. Like, that's just like nothing, right? But I get it. We all have fears. So you can't just like, you can't laugh at it and be like, oh, that's a silly fear. A fear is a fear. It doesn't matter how you see it. Everyone has these sort of things that they can't get over. But I have a couple too. And I hate even calling them fears because I feel like what they are is so beyond fear. It's like this thought of something so disgusting and so sad that it's not even fear. It's just such a tragic thought that it's just like it it makes me more sad, and like it makes me more traumatized and sadness and like fear. It's just so incredibly sad and just like it's unimaginable. So you're probably wondering, what is this thing you think about that you imagine would be like the worst? You know, because sometimes, for example, somebody might do something like that would be the most embarrassing thing, or that'd be the worst thing ever. I only have a few things that I ever really think about that I think that are worth really thinking about. Oh, and there comes a drilling again. I'm gonna see if I can somehow reduce that noise. See that drilling that you hear? That's the kind of drilling I probably have in my head when I think about these thoughts that I'm going to mention. Now, first and foremost, a very reasonable fear to have, and one that like I'm sure everyone has, of course, or a sadness or a fear, whatever you want to call it, is this idea of, wow, that drilling is special. Oh, Lordy Lord. Oh my God. They've been working on this apartment for so many months. Jesus fucking Christ. Oh my Lord. They're wow. Okay. I can't even fucking think. My fucking brain is just like right now, it just wants to break that person's drill. Oh my Lord. Okay. So what was I saying? Keep it together, Tony. Wow. Oh, my head. Okay. God damn it. Focus, Tony, focus. Okay. How long do you really need to drill for? Like, what the fuck are you drilling? How long does it take to just drill something? You know, you stick the drill in it and you've drilled it and it's done. How many fucking times can you possibly drill? Like, how many holes can you possibly need to fucking drill? You're sitting there and you have a drill in your hand. How many fucking holes can you possibly drill? Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. So, back to deep fears or sadnesses or something that you feel. A very reasonable one, I assume, is one of if you have a loved one who dies, right? I mean, that's a very given sort of sadness or fear that probably every person would probably have at some level, right? But there's one that fucks me up more than just simply the death of someone you love, because that's like sort of like almost expected, and it's like, well, yeah, it's gonna happen. It's like so tragic and sad, but the one sort of repeating thing that I always think about, because I've seen little glimpses of it in people, and just seeing even tiny little glimpses is so fucking weird to see and so sad to see. And that is when you see someone that you love or care about, when their mind just slowly sort of like just changes, or something happens to them where it's like they're not the same person anymore. Whether it's something like they're slowly getting like some sort of dementia, but you just look at them and they're just, you don't recognize them anymore. And it's just the strangest thing in the world to see someone fade away right in front of your eyes, because it's weird, because like, you know, you there's someone you care about and then they just suddenly die. It's like, that's so tragic and so horrible. But you think that's just what happened. And it's like, you know, they were this really amazing person and then they're gone. But when you see a really amazing person in front of your eyes just slowly fade away, and you don't even recognize them anymore, and you don't even know what the hell is going on, you don't know what's going on with them at all. And sometimes you see little glimpses of that in people. And just even seeing a tiny, I mean, I've seen little glimpses, and I've also seen it go pretty full on. How full on I've seen it go, I can say that I've seen it go to the point where I didn't recognize that person anymore. And let me tell you, that is one of the strangest things. So I guess you can say I've been kind of traumatized by that, or I guess now I always have it in the back of my head. Anyone that I know, I think like, when are they just gonna like, am I gonna see them next time? And then all of a sudden they slowly wither away and change into something I don't even recognize anymore. It's such a strange thing to see. Like, if you're talking about something that's a complete mind fuck, to anyone who's ever experienced anything like that, it is the biggest mind fuck you can experience. Knowing someone and then all of a sudden seeing them just disintegrate in front of your eyes. It's every word you can possibly imagine. It's sad, it's tragic, and I guess it happens for different reasons, you know? I mean, I'm not going to break down why it's happening and tell you that I know exactly what's going on inside their brain, but sometimes it could just be something a little bit more innocent, and it doesn't have to be this big tragic thing. Sometimes it's just simply, you know someone and then you just grow apart, and it doesn't have to be this like weird psychosis going on in their brain. It's just simply the idea that you two grow apart, and then you look at each other, you're sitting in the same room, and it's like you don't even connect anymore. It's like you're so far apart, you know? You look into that person's eyes, and it's like not even the same person you knew. And it's weird because you have to sort of accept that and then realize, well, there you go. That's done with. And I always imagine it almost feels like dying, you know? I've talked about this a lot in my life, how we have this idea of like death. I wonder what it's like when you die. But I have a feeling we die so many times in our own life, and we see the people around us die physically and mentally. We're like, they're just not the same person. So it's just basically like a death. But I feel like we see it happen so much with ourselves and other people that I think that we know exactly what it's like when we die. You know, if you believe in the idea of some sort of, that your awareness is not your body, and when you die, you still have your awareness, and you go on and you have other experiences. That's basically what death feels like. It feels like, when you think about what is death, well, your consciousness lives on and you just go on and have other experiences. What does that sound like? It sounds like your own life on earth right now. How many times have we all died and then moved on and had new experiences, right? Because the person I was when I was 20, that person doesn't exist anymore. The person I was when I was 25, that person doesn't exist anymore. None of these people exist anymore, which is so weird how we always hold people so accountable for shit they did when they were like younger. It's like, that person doesn't exist anymore, man. It's kind of like, what, you never did fucked up shit when you were younger? Like, everyone does. And it's like, oh, did you do this? Well, yeah, man. Everybody does fucked up shit. And then all of a sudden, we hold them accountable for that for the rest of their life. Like, I'm an idiot now, and the person I was when I was younger, I was even more of an idiot. You're always an idiot. The whole goal of life is that you constantly live day by day and you become less of an idiot. That's the whole goal. But you're always some sort of an idiot because you never attain some sort of perfection. You know, I'm going to be doing idiotic things until the day I die because that's just the way we are as people. And yeah, it's just like we're constantly dying and we have a rebirth. So like this idea of, like I said, maybe it's just something a little more innocent. Like you don't see somebody getting full on dementia, but you just grow apart because that person's different. You look at them and they're not even the same person you once knew. That person died. That's it. As simple as that. That person has died. The person you used to know died. And now what you're seeing is a new version of somebody. But it's just, it might as well be a completely new person. You still call them the same name, but it's not the same fucking person anymore. And that's the way it is with all of us. We're not the same person anymore. And yet, we hold people to the standards or to the way they were 5, 10, 20 years ago. I mean, you have to give people a chance to be a new person. There's not one goddamn fucking person in this world who hasn't done stupid, idiotic shit. So this idea is we're constantly, so let's say you die, you die and you have this awareness and it goes on. And you wonder, like, how attached would you be to this life after you die? You probably wouldn't be very much attached at all. Why would you be? Are you attached to the person you were when you were 20? I'm talking of somebody who's let's say you're in your 30s or 40s. You're probably not too much attached to the person you were when you were 20, right? That person's so long gone. That's basically a past life. If you're like, 35 and you're looking back to the time you were 20, that's a past life. You're still called the same person, but that's not the same life, right? It's just simply not the same life. And so you died, and now you're living a new life, and you kind of have the memory of that person when they were 20, but you've moved on past that. I have a feeling that's exactly what it's like when you die. If we still have if we still have awareness, if you're still self-aware when you die, I imagine for the first few moments, you're like, oh my God, I died and I can't believe it. And you look back at your life and you're like, you wonder about all the mistakes you made and all the pain you gone through and all the happy moments, and you cry, you're probably emotional. But then eventually you just kind of start having new experiences, and that's it. That's your new life. And your past life is gone. Which kind of makes it, it makes it kind of sad. It's kind of heartbreaking, but there's nothing you can do about it. What do I mean by that? That is kind of heartbreaking and nothing. Sometimes you think, oh yeah, Tony, you like to think about having an afterlife, and you like to think about the idea that your awareness continues so you can feel good about yourself, so you can think like, oh, you get to still hang out with your relatives and the people you know in this life, but you don't really. So no, it doesn't make me happier. I connect with the idea that your awareness is not your body, that it lives on past. But that doesn't make me feel good to think like, oh yeah, I get to still hang out with all my buddies and my family and my mom and because they're not going to be the same people anymore. Because they're just not. They're not going to remain the same people. So even if we're eternal, the people we were in this life, it's just a snapshot. And that's it. Like, let's say you had a really beautiful connection with your mom or your wife or your sister or your daughter or your son in this life, and you had this beautiful connection with them. You both die, move on, and you have other experiences. You're not those same people. So whether there's a part of an awareness that lives on, it doesn't matter, because the second you move on and do different things, you're not that person anymore. It's the whole analogy of the clone. People have this debate about, like, if you clone yourself, is it you? Yeah, it is. It's exactly you for 1 second. But then a second after that, when it diverges from you, it starts having its own experiences from its own point of view, and it becomes a completely different person. We always become a completely different person. It doesn't matter if we're eternal and we live on. All these beautiful little moments we get to experience with the people that we love in this life, they're gone. Your sweet mother that you had this sweet connection with, whether you two live on, the type of connection you had and the moments you had in this life, they're gone. Your son, your daughter, your brother, your uncle, whoever you had this connection with, they're gone. It's gone. And there's like a bittersweet tragedy behind that. That's just, if you let yourself think about it too much, it could like cripple you. That's how sad it could be, realizing how momentary everything is. Absolutely everything fades away. Everything. Absolutely everything fades away. Nothing lasts forever. everything fades away. The only thing that doesn't fade away is the fucking drilling. The drilling always comes back and it's the same. It's always just as annoying. You hear it, right? Yeah, see, that always comes back. It's the only truly eternal thing in existence. Drilling. Drilling right in your fucking head as you're trying to do a podcast. That's it. It's the only true eternal thing in this world. And it's funny because, like, again, people, I just don't think about that stuff, Tony. Come on, just have fun. Well, that's the thing. That's what happens when you're cursed with an intellect. You know? When you sit here and you masturbate in your own fucking tragic thoughts. You know? Like I said, I would love to pat myself on the back and say, oh, I don't have a lot of fears. Because generally speaking, when I'm only comparing myself to most people that I know that talk about their fears. It's like, Jesus Christ, man, like, how many things freak you out? I'm scared of nightmares. I'm scared of this. Ironically, generally speaking, probably comparative to most people, I probably don't have a lot of fears. But the fears I do have completely cripple me because I think about them all the time. And I'm not even sure what to call them. To call them fears or just to call them thoughts that always are in my head, and they might as well be a fear because I know the one about seeing someone fade away from your eyes that you know, that's definitely fear related or something, because I mean that's just, I imagine how horrible it would be. Like the idea terrifies me, the idea of seeing someone just fade away in front of your eyes. That's just such a sad thought. Like I said, I have experience with that. And it's a mind fuck, to say the least. And the other one I always have that cripples me nonstop because of my fucking, you know, like I said, yeah, we have an intellect, is just, you know, existence itself. There's never a day when I don't wake up and think, how the fuck am I here? How is any of this possible? This is absolutely ridiculous. I can't believe I just keep on existing. I can't believe that I exist. As long as I have an intellect, I will probably never be able to get that thought out of my head. You know, people are like, come on, just let it go, Tony. I don't know, man. Like I said, we all, like, let's say I have a friend and that friend has 100 fears. I'm scared of this. I'm scared of this. It just is what it is, you know, like what can I say? Just like mine are just the way it is. I don't have a million fears that I constantly think about or like thoughts, but the ones I do are pretty fucking intense, and they are what they are, you know. That's another thing, you know, we kind of fucking just are what we are. We are what we are. I am how I am. I didn't create my personality. We are what the fuck we are. Now that sounds like, well, that's very unempowering, Tony. Call it whatever the hell you want to call it. But we really just are what we are. And this is the way I am, you know, for better or for worse. And this is the way anyone else is, you know. But it's funny because you only really need one fear. You know, like, let's say like someone has 1 million fears and you think, oh, look at that person. That person has 1 million fears and you only have one. Well, that one fear is basically the same as 1 million if you let it cripple you. You know, whether you have one fear or 1 million fears, it just really depends like how you let it affect your life. And little things that I have, man, they're hard to get out of my head. That's for sure. They are hard to get out of my head. But yeah, and the last thought that I want to talk about is just, like I said, the way we hold on to people's past. You know, it blows my mind. We're constantly dying and being reborn, and yet somehow people hold us to our past in such a severe way. I think it really comes down from a point of misery, most likely, because I think if we see a flaw in someone else, we want to hold them accountable for that flaw for the rest of their life, because I guess subconsciously somehow it makes us feel a little bit better about ourselves. Like, well, look how fucking flawed that. Hey, did you know how much that person fucked up when they were younger? Hey, you know, 10 years ago that person really fucked up. Oh yeah, they did. Yeah, they fucked up worse than I've ever fucked up, right? It's kind of like that. Most likely it's like that, because deep down, I think inside we all want, when we let go of that insecurity and that fear, I'm sure we all deep down want everyone else to thrive and succeed. We don't want to see ourselves fail, right? Like, we don't want to see each other fail. We want to lift each other up and support each other, right? So it really goes back to that fucking bully mentality, right? No one's actually an asshole. I don't believe in assholes. I believe in, like, we just project whatever the fuck we felt in life. Someone says that person's a bully or that person's an asshole. They are what they are because of the life they've lived, right? It's a simple analogy of, like, the bully in school. They're only a bully and they're only mean to you because most likely they've experienced that themselves, right? So they're just dishing out that misery onto you because that's what they felt somewhere else. That's all it is. It's like a fucking never-ending cycle. And who was the initial instigator of that domino effect, right? Who was the initial instigator? Because it goes back from the beginning of time, right? It's a never-ending domino effect. It's a never-ending loop that you'll probably never find the beginning for. And we're all just one piece of that fucking domino. And wherever we land in that whole maze, we land. And you just keep going. You keep going. You wake up every day and you keep going. And like I said, if you're lucky enough to find some sort of meaning and purpose in your life, God, what a blessing that would be for anybody. Because like I said, when I always talk about this idea how existence is inherently meaningless, that's good. I don't say that in a sad way, because existence in your life cannot possibly be anything other than meaningless, because who would dictate any meaning to it, right? Because it would be some sort of satanic dictatorship. No one can force a meaning upon you, right? Even if there was a creator and this creator created you and told you the meaning, it can't, right? So ultimately, any sort of meaning has to come from you. If you're a free will entity existing, any ultimate meaning has to come from you. Someone else can't dictate a meaning to you. Otherwise, it's a fucking dictatorship, right? What kind of fucking demonic world would that be if it was literally a dictatorship? Like a forced meaning upon you, right? So when I say that existence is ultimately meaningless, is because it can't be any other way, but that's not necessarily a sad thing. It just is what it is, just like existence. It just is. So all I'm saying is that since it clearly can't have any inherent meaning, it's up to you to manufacture some sort of meaning. Even if you know everything is ultimately meaningless, it's so important to create some sort of meaning, even if it's artificial, because without it, I don't know if you're ever truly happy. I really don't know if you ever truly feel happy without some sort of meaning. That's why in the last episode, I talk about the idea of, like, if I had kids or something like that, or if I was saving the world or doing something really meaningful, I'm sure I'd probably be a lot happier. Like I said, I think if I had a kid, the only way I would not be a lot happier if I was probably a really big piece of shit, right? Because if you have a kid and you're less happy, wow, you're probably like just a real piece of shit, right? Because you just created life, and I'm like, wow, look at this little thing. I just created some life and now I'm responsible for it. And it must bring you incredible meaning in life, and also probably bring you a lot of happiness, right? But like I said, it doesn't have to be just a kid. It could be a million other ways you can find deep meaning. But without it, man, I really don't know if you could ever truly be happy. I really love the YouTube community, and I've been a part of the I've been a part of the YouTube community. I remember YouTube being created, being built from the beginning. I was there since the beginning, and the amount of YouTube personalities or people who are known on YouTube, the amount of them that I've seen make confessional videos where after a while they're just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm not happy. Because initially you think that, like, oh, I'm going to get a whole bunch of subscribers and then I'm going to be happy because I'm going to feel successful. The nostalgia of that wears out. That's the thing. The nostalgia of everything wears out. It's the same idea of like the person who wins the lottery. Oh, I won the lottery. Now I'm super happy. The nostalgia that eventually wears off and then you're left in the same state as you were before. That's the thing. And this is not just like my own thoughts. If you're one of those, I need peer-reviewed studies kind of person who doesn't like to just sort of contemplate their own ideas, if you want peer-reviewed studies, you can read those too, because there's been many studies done on the idea that like wherever your natural state of mind is, your baseline state, after you win the lottery, after about a year or two, you return back to whatever your baseline state was before. You basically, after the nostalgia wears off. But you really don't need to see a peer-reviewed study on that. It's kind of common sense if you really think about it, obviously, right? The nostalgia of getting 1 million subscribers will wear off. I honestly believe that the only few things that the nostalgia probably never wears off on is actually having some sort of meaning. Because if you have some sort of meaning you've created in your life, some purpose, I don't think the nostalgia of that can wear off, right? I think that's one of the few things where the nostalgia can't wear off, because as long as you still have purpose, it's not going to wear off because you still have purpose. You're waking up that day with a purpose in mind. See, I don't really wake up in the morning with a purpose in mind. I just wake up for the sake of waking up. I wake up in the morning and I think, well, here I am. I'm still existing. I guess I'll wake up because that's what people do, right? When you exist, what you do is you get up. What do? You take a shower, you brush your teeth, you make your coffee, you just live, right? Because you exist. So it's ironic because I have enough intellect to understand what I'm doing, yet I don't seem to have enough intellect and intelligence to steer that in a way that actually creates more meaning for myself, So I have enough awareness to understand how much I failed in creating any sort of significant meaning in my life, yet I can't seem to fucking figure out how to steer that towards some sort of meaning, Yeah, that's the irony of having some sort of awareness or intellect. A lot of the times you're just aware enough to realize all your flaws, but somehow not aware and smart enough to actually steer those flaws in a direction that will actually get you what you want, and that is more meaning and something that you feel fulfilled in, But yeah, going back to the YouTube personalities, they all make their videos usually after a point, after they get to 1 million subscribers, whatever goal they set for themselves. And then they just make a video saying, I don't even know what I'm doing anymore. I just keep uploading videos for the sake of uploading videos. And that's life. Did you hear that? I keep uploading videos for the sake of uploading videos. That's what it comes, because that's what it feels like. That's what my life feels like. I wake up in the morning for the sake of waking up in the morning. Because that's just what you do when you're human. You wake up, oh, here I am. I guess I'll wake up. Get out of bed. And you have to structure life in a way where you're doing more than just making videos for the sake of making videos. And I think that's what every YouTube personality realizes after a certain amount of time. Like, there's got to be something more than this. And that's really the question to everything, right? There's got to be more. I just made $1 million. How come I still feel the same? There's got to be more. I just got 1 million subscribers. How come I still feel the same? There's got to be more. And then you realize that what you're missing is an actual meaning in your life. You haven't created, you're doing things, you're relatively happy, but you don't feel any deep purpose or meaning behind any of it. And then that just really fucks with your brain. It fucks with your brain the same way it fucks with your brain imagining someone that you love disappearing right in front of your eyes. Whether it's from some sort of dementia or just you two have just simply grown apart and they're not even the same person anymore. You're not the same person for whatever reason. It's a mind fuck. And that's why I always say we live in such a circus. Never take that. When I say Earth existence here is a fucking circus, I mean it's because it's everything. It's beautiful, it's tragic, it's painful, it's happiness, and the irony is you just can't have one without the other, can you? That's been debated for so much, like this idea of duality. Do you need duality? Some people in certain philosophies, some sort of spiritual, metaphysical philosophies, they like to say that, the goal is to, like evolve past this state of duality, because duality is what brings you misery and all this stuff. But it's like, how do you really appreciate anything without some sort of duality? So ultimately, it kind of has to be a shit show. It has to be a circus. You have to basically have a painting where you smear every single color humanly imaginable and you just splatter it on that canvas. And somehow out of all that mess, you have to make some sense of it and create some sort of meaning behind all that. That's what I kind of see existence as, just this infinite canvas, and then you just splatter every color imaginable on this canvas, and when you look at it, you're like, what the fuck is any of this? And it's nothing. It just is. And every single person who observes this canvas with this splattering has to come up with their own meaning. It's like that when you go into a fucking art gallery and you see this weird abstract splattering of paint, and everyone walks up beside it and they're like, yes, I can sense this, and they all sit there and create some sort of meaning behind it, because that way it's like a deep painting, right? Because if you don't create some sort of meaning behind this painting, it's just a horseshit painting that somebody made where they just took some paint and they splattered it on the canvas. So it's just like, what is this? This is just horseshit. But if you give it some sort of deep meaning, then it's like a masterpiece, right? So it's kind of like that. That's what your life is like. Your life without manufacturing some sort of meaning is like this horseshit thing that you're like staring at it going, what the fuck is this? And then when you give it some sort of significance or meaning, all of a sudden your life is a fucking masterpiece. And that's the whole fucking gimmick, right? How the fuck do you make your life into a masterpiece? Well, you got to convince yourself of some meaning behind it. Create it, manufacture it somehow, because you can't just look at that painting and think, what is this horseshit mess? It makes no sense, right? Because a giant splattering of infinite colors on a canvas is never going to make any sense to the rational. It's never going to make sense. You just have to look in between all that and sort of come up with some sort of, oh yeah, I see some sort of pattern here. Yeah, no, this makes sense, and find some sort of meaning behind it and significance behind it. Otherwise, it just will always look like just a giant splattered mess. I think that was actually my first sip of coffee during this. Not much of a dark roast episode, is it? My coffee's dwindling away here. There's barely any left. Oh my lord. See, this is what the intellect gives you, just making sounds with your mouth. I always wonder, like, when I meet people, I always wonder, like, what they're really like. That's another thing I think about a lot. I don't know if you want to call it like, I don't know what to call it, but it's something that's always in my mind. I always wonder when I look at people, what are they really like? I sometimes think that, like, as we evolve into the future, that mystery will be gone more. I have a feeling eventually we'll be able to just look into our thoughts, and you're going to know what that person's feeling, and it's going to be a completely different experience. See, because I think a lot of the times now, the reason we judge each other so much is because we actually don't know our intent. Because everything's really intent, right? When we communicate with each other, we always wonder, what was that person's intent? Let's say someone says something to you and you kind of get offended, or it kind of makes you feel a certain way. if you actually knew their genuine intention behind what they said or what they did, then it wouldn't have the same effect on you. But you're just always left wondering, like, what did that person actually mean by that? And that goes back to how we judge each other so much. There's times when I sometimes wish, like, when you say something and someone gets offended by it, or something you did, and then you kind of wish someone could look inside of you and see, like, look, man, this was my intention. I had no horrible intentions towards you. Can't you see that? And then they see it and it's like, oh, right, I could see it. And that's it. And it'd be nice if we could all look into each other and see what the intent behind something was. But at the same time, that's what sort of creates like an interesting mystery. It's a different kind of experience. That's all it is. But I definitely see us going towards that more, where I think soon we're going to be able to like really read each other's thoughts and intentions more and more and more. And then, of course, once we're able to do that, there's going to probably be this retro nostalgia of people who probably will read in history books like the time before we could read each other's thoughts, and how interesting that must have been. Think about the idea of you meet like a girl or a boy and you say hi and you look at each other. You don't know if that person likes you, remember back when you were like in high school or something, or whatever the case. I guess it doesn't have to be in high school, but at any point in your life when you meet somebody, like, wow, did that person like me? And you don't know. You kind of think you know, but you don't really know. You kind of like, I wonder what that person's thinking. That mystery will be gone. If we could read each other's minds, the second you see somebody and you look at them, you're going to know if they actually like you or not, because you'll be able to see it in their thoughts and in how they feel. So the mystery of that will be gone. That's why at the end of the day, there's no ultimate meaning. I mean, not ultimate meaning. There's no ultimate type of existence. There's so many variables on existence, even in the way we experience time. Like, we're so glued into this idea of how we experience time on Earth, right? This sort of like one moment after the other. There's probably so many different ways to experience time and just experience existence. We have a very particular version of it that we're experiencing right now, but I always wonder, like, how many different types of existence there is and how many different ways you could experience it. What if, like, I think there was a movie done on this or whatever. It sounds really cheesy and lame, but what if, like, in some life you actually experience life backwards? Like, you start really old and then you just go backwards. Like, is that like Benjamin Button? I don't know, but the idea is this idea of forward time. Maybe what if you experience everything backwards? I know that sounds kind of cheesy and lame, but that's probably not the most interesting example. But just the idea, I sometimes wonder, I don't know if we realize how miraculous it is, just the idea that we get to experience time. It's so fucking mind-blowing that we get to experience this continuous time. Imagine if you lived in an existence where everything was just this constant fluctuation, kind of like, how they say in quantum physics, like, the existence, the universe just came out of a quantum fluctuation. But I always wonder, like, these, because all there ever is now, right? That's why I said, like, it's so miraculous that we get to experience the sensation of time, because all there is infinite moments of now, like click, 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 click. It's just like less than a second long, these spurts of nows, because the past is gone and the future hasn't happened yet. And every moment is just this tiny little fluctuation of now. But imagine if that's all you ever experienced, these random fluctuations of now with no apparent memory of the past and no apparent thought of the future. What the fuck would existence be? And I always wonder, what if that's how existence started? Existence was just these random fluctuations of now. And this happened for like eons of time. I guess you can't even put a time on it, right? Because you're not even measuring it. But after fluctuation, after random fluctuation, eventually somehow this organized in a way where these quantum fluctuations became self-aware, and it created these simulations that we live in that have this apparent illusion of time where we go from one moment to the other. Now, I know that sounds idiotic. I don't know. I'm sure there's a way I could have worded it better, but, because I sometimes feel like, because there's always this debate, are we living in a simulation? Whether there's like this eternal consciousness that created these worlds, or whether it was like some ancient alien advanced race that created this simulation. The point is, it doesn't matter what created the simulation, or maybe the simulation just organically created itself somehow, right? But the idea is, these lives almost seem like they were manufactured, because it almost seems like there's no way we could have ever experienced time the way it seems. It almost intuitively, it seems too neat, too organized, too constant. Like existence intuitively seems way too like a quantum fluctuation. Like it just seems like a very quantum fluctuated kind of thing, and yet we experience this super organized, neat. It's almost like somebody figured out a hack how to stabilize those quantum fluctuations and somehow make this very believable, stable reality to experience life in. That's what it's always felt like to me. And of course, I'm just making sounds with my mouth, and that might sound like nonsense to somebody, because it's just an intuitive thought. And like with all intuitive thoughts, I guess you can just laugh at them because they're not peer reviewed, because that's the holy grail, right? Where's the peer reviewed study? But I think it's much more interesting to just this idea of like going deep inside of your intuitive feelings and just getting something out, because I think all true creativity comes from there anyways. No true creativity comes from a peer-reviewed study, but that's what I feel when I go deep inside that state, that intuitive state. It almost feels like these worlds were somehow built, created, whether they were naturally created or somebody actually made a choice to create them, whatever the case. But it just seems like these realities that we live in here are just too neat. Like they're just so organized and so neat and so stable. It's almost a miracle. We just get to experience these lives. Look, I just lived for 100 years and it was so neat. You just kept going forward. I started here and I ended up here. It just seems so neat and stable and so organized. When really intuitively you kind of feel like existence is like just this complete quantum fluctuation. And by some miracle, we get to experience these lives in such a beautiful linear order. But I really do sometimes wonder what it'd be like to just be living in this perpetual existence of just like quantum fluctuation after quantum fluctuation. And yeah, it's weird. I see. It's so funny when people have these like I guess what you would call typical human fears, like I'm scared to talk in public. That's the most common fear, public speaking or something. I don't relate to those fears at all. But I have so many weird things that I think about. Like I think about the idea of like being this awareness that exists in this never-ending void. And you're sitting there, you're conscious, and you're wondering, what the fuck do I do? And after eons of time of being in this void and being self-aware, somehow you manufacture these realities. Like maybe you start off with something really simple, like you live in this infinite void and all of a sudden you, I don't know, by some miracle you have this idea of like a wall, or like, I don't even know how you would even have a thought, but this idea of somehow maybe just accidentally happens. Like you're in this room and it has 4 walls. And then you realize, holy shit, I just created like some sort of reality. I'm in a room with four walls, because that would be mind blowing, because now you've experienced your first limitation. Like you're actually in a room with four walls. You've built a virtual reality. You're confined by these four walls. Confounded, what the fuck? See, I've talked for so long, my mind is fucking melting. I can't even think straight. But yeah, you're inside this room with four walls, and you're thinking, oh wow, so now I'm experiencing limitation. You're not in this infinite void anymore. So it's like, what can I do within these four walls? And then maybe you build more and more on top of that, you know? See, these are the thoughts that I have. I don't know what the fuck you even call these, really. What do you call these? Schizophrenic episodes? Thinking about nonsense that you don't need to think about? I really don't know what you would even call these. But yeah, well, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I have plenty of silly things I think about. And it's not but like I said, there's not, at the end of the day, there's not much difference. Whatever we think about, whether it's fear of public speaking or some more traditional fears, or whether you're thinking about floating in an infinite void by yourself, because I can't get rid of that thought a lot of the times too. How ultimately I always kind of feel alone. That's I would have to say the biggest irony of existing is the fact that if you want to exist and have a separate identity, you always at some level feel alone. Because you need to create that separation to have an identity. And when you create that separation, you're split from the whole. Because let's say existence is all one thing, you know, like when people meditate, everything's one. We're all one. It sounds beautiful. But when you have an ego and a personality and you live inside the separate body, ultimately you always feel like you're alone. Even if you have somebody right beside you, you're experiencing life alone. Because everything is always from your perspective, from your point of view. That's why a lot of times there's people who believe in the idea of that no one else exists other than them, because that's what reality basically feels like. No matter how close you get to somebody, you want to like literally go inside of them, but you can't. You're just always just experiencing life from your point of view. You know, you never truly experience life together. It's always just from your point of view. Even if you're holding hands and walking down the street and you want to just like completely attach yourself to someone, there's still an element of you that feels alone, because you're experiencing everything from just your point of view, from your eyes. And ironically, that means you always somehow feel alone in some sort of weird way, because you feel like everything is just happening from your perspective, and you just always slightly feel alone, no matter how many people are around you. And the irony is, if you connect, there's no way to get around that, because if you say, well, I want to merge with source or all that is and become one, so I don't feel that emptiness, that aloneness anymore. Well, the irony behind that is, if you merge and become one, then you become nothing. So you can't do that. What do I mean by that? You know, people like talk about God. There's just one thing, God. God is nothing. I talk about this all the time. God is nothing. If there's just one thing, it's nothing. The only way you can experience anything is through perspective and through contrast. And you can't do that with just one thing. So if there's just one thing that exists, by default, that one thing is nothing. So the only way to experience anything is to split that one thing into two things. And the second you do that, you can compare that one thing to the other thing. Hey, look, I'm here and you're here. We're two separate things. Bam, you're alone. You're never one anymore. Now you're two separate things living life with your own experiences. And that bit of loneliness is just always, 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 always there. If you really think about it. Like I said, with everything in life, it's just how much of that intellect you allow to fuck with your thought. Because all that stuff really comes from your intellect when you really think about it. You know? You can kind of like try to tap out of all of that and just, you know, be more carefree. But if you think about that kind of stuff on a really deep level, you realize that, yeah, you're kind of always alone. You know, that's why people have that expression, you're born alone and you die alone. Even if you're surrounded by 30 people at your death, you're still dying alone. You can't die with somebody. You know, you can't be born with somebody, you can't die with somebody. Because even if you're like, it's just, there's no way around it. There's just no way around it. Ultimately, the second you split into two things, you're going to have a feeling of some sort of separation. And I always feel it. I always feel it. The two thoughts I always feel is this feeling of like, I can't believe I exist. Every day I've had this thought where I'm like, this is just, it's inexplicable that I exist and that anything exists. And then also this feeling of like slightly being separate or alone, no matter what's going on, because you are. That's why. The reason I feel that's because you always are. There's no way around it, like I said. Because if you're just one thing and you're truly together, you're nothing. And the second you split into two separate things, then you're separate. That's it. It's really as simple as that. So that's not a very, that's not a very cheery thought to end the podcast with, because it's been over an hour. But this is my experience. You know, this is my experience of living. Like I said, we all have, I don't even know if I want to call them flaws. We all are how we are. And we all have things we can't stop thinking about. Like I said, some people, maybe they can't stop thinking about the fact that they have to, I don't know, do a public presentation and they're terrified of speaking in public. And then other people, they can't get their own thoughts out of their head about existence and life. And we all have it. We all have some. We're all the same, really. You know, we're all the same. We're all eternally flawed and we're all eternally beautiful, as cheesy as that sounds. Because one of the things I can guarantee is that this idea of being eternally beautiful is the idea that there really is nobody exactly like you. We're all eternally unique in some sort of way. Like I said, even if you had a clone of you. So I'll leave with that thought. Leave with the thought that you're always eternally beautiful and unique in some sort of way. Because even if someone cloned you right now and made an exact copy of you, you would still be eternally and beautifully unique, because a second after that clone has been done, that clone is going to end up being different than you, because it's going to have its own perspective and own experiences. So we're always eternally unique and beautiful, and somehow we exist and we just keep on existing, and I have no magical answers to any of it, but somehow we exist. And that's it. And even though we are all slightly separately alone, you know, we are sort of always at some level feel like we're like eternally alone, but at the same time, there's nothing we can do about that. Because like I said, if we were all together, we'd be nothing. So the only way we can experience anything is to have some sort of level of aloneness and that feeling of separation. It's the only way it can be done. So I'm here and you're wherever you are. I'm here and you're there. And we talk to each other. We become friends with other people. And we have family that loves us and you love other people. And at the end of the day, that has to be enough in some sort of way, because that's all we have. That has to be enough to give you some sort of feeling of togetherness, because that's all you have. It's literally, that's all we have. That's our only hope. So you try to create as much of that around you as you can. And that's it. because that's all you can do. So maybe that was a bit more positive, so I'll just leave it at that. And until the next episode, I hope everyone's doing good, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care, guys. Bye.